Hi everyone, welcome to this lesson. In this lesson, we're going to be going over the where question. Where is your light coming from? Its direction. And the bonus kicker to this video is that it's a full length from start to finish shoot where you'll see my entire workflow from lighting all the way to styling the food. This lesson's actually a two-part lesson because we're going to be going over the two most common lighting directions, side lighting and back lighting. Now, this lesson is all about side lighting, and it's so easy to use and modify that it's no wonder it's the most popular choice as far as direction goes for food photographers. Now, in your story, the light could really come from anywhere, and just as long as you have identified the source and it makes sense. I mean, you could draw a 360-degree circle around your food like this or like this, and the light could really come from any of those angles as long as it makes sense to your story. But if we identified the sun as our source, then we're really kind of confined to only a few realistic lighting directions, and side lighting is one of them. And so in this lesson, we're going to see how side lighting can benefit and add to our story. Now, going back to the first few days of my photography career, the 5W questions were but a mystery to me. I mean, I knew direct light was a no-go because it's just way too contrasting and created more problems than it solved, or more questions than it answered. And so I went the opposite direction, and all my images came out way too flat, way too soft. And that really didn't answer very many questions either. And so I know I keep pushing direct diffuse lighting onto you, but it's really the simplest way to start answering those questions and pinpoint and nailing your story. The direction of light is one and the same. The direction tells the viewers where the source is located, and you need shadows to be able to see the direction. If your shadows are too strong or hard, they give direction but kill the story. And if your shadows are too weak and soft, the viewer won't be able to understand where the light is coming from. Once you're able to add direction to the light, you're able to add the right type of shadows, you are able to tell the viewer that there is a real world outside of this frame. And when the entire world is created in a little rectangle frame by you, realism starts to become important. Fundamentally, light direction's all about giving your subject shape. We want the food to be as 3D as possible, and we want to use the highlights and shadows to separate the food from the background as much as possible. And this way, your food stands out as the hero in your story. Now, the story that I'm going to be doing today is all about these fresh cinnamon roll wreaths that are straight from the oven. They look really delicious. And I usually use a stand-in. I'll place something here on the table before I bring the food out. That way I can get most of my composition and the styling done before the food kind of dies. Now today I'm going to be using my Canon EOS 5DS with a 50mm lens, and I'm going to be attaching it to my stand here above my table, and I'll be doing a top-down or a 90-degree angle on the food, so looking directly over the food. Make a really nice, great composition because the cinnamon roll wreaths are very circular and it'll look great in a very graphic way. So I've chosen this background, and I know that I'll be using a certain kind of props here. I have 3 of these cinnamon roll wreaths, so I'll need 3 locations. So I'll probably set one on this wooden chopping block. I'll have a wooden plate, and I'll be setting one on the wooden plate and then one kind of in the middle of the two. And I kind of want to create a composition that's kind of like a triangle because I have 3 objects. I'll want to create kind of this triangle between the 3, this imaginary triangle between the 3. I'll also probably want to use some other props, like I have this nice blue fabric that I'll probably be draping over the wooden chopping block here. Just to make it a little bit more realistic, like they just came out of the oven, you know, that's kind of part of my story. And then I'll have some of these almonds that I sprinkled on top, so I'll add a bowl of the almonds. That way it connects those two parts of the story. And then maybe I'll add some extra plates there, just off on the side, because I'll probably be cutting a piece of the cinnamon roll cake, and maybe I'll want to place it on one of those plates. That way it looks like somebody's about to have a nice, delicious slice of cinnamon roll wreath. Now I use side lighting for most of the food stories that I tell. I use backlighting only every once in a while when I want to highlight a food's reflections, But for the majority of my stories, I use side lighting. Now, I don't use front lighting for three major reasons. First of all, technically, there could be some reflective surface on the food itself, and if you shine light at it, it'll bounce straight back into the camera, obscuring parts of the food. Although the main reason why I don't light food from the front is because I'm thinking about where the viewer is sitting in the image. And if the food is lit from the front, then the light's going to be coming from behind the viewer. And for me, that just sends red flags off saying, hey, if I was sitting there and the light was coming from behind me, wouldn't I be casting a shadow onto the food? Another reason not to light from the front is because if you do, the shadows will fall behind the food. And this will cause the food to blend in with the background. There'll be no separation. Side lighting is much more effective at creating that separation because you have nice highlights and shadows that outline your food, which will separate it from the scene. So I got some really nice direct light coming through my window, and as you know, I like the diffuser, so I threw up the diffuser, and this will allow me to keep the strength but cut the contrast, kind of like sun rays through a curtain. It'll also allow me to keep those shadows intact, which will give my light some nice direction. I'll also try to fix up some of the areas in my composition that I thought maybe were weak before when I added the stand-ins. Just move things around. Luckily, the stand-ins that I had, are the actual props that I'm going to be using in the shoot. The styling was pretty easy. I kind of already did it when I put the stand-ins and got my composition earlier. Now it's time to place the food, and if I had used the stand-in like an actual object that I wasn't going to use in the shoot, I'd be really careful to place it in the exact same spot. That way I don't mess up my composition. Now I might give it a couple of twists just to see, how it plays with the light at different angles, but we'll see when I look through the composition and see what, is actually best for my overall story. Now, this might have something to do with an area of the food that you want to highlight, or maybe just an area of the food that you didn't burn. Now, does my light fit my story? Well, I can't be 100% certain until I make the final adjustments, but as it stands, my story was cinnamon rolls freshly baked and then placed straight onto my table. Now, I imagine myself eating these possibly in the morning with my cup of coffee at my breakfast table, maybe my writing book. So as it is right now, as we stand right now, the light actually does work well in this instance, and it fits my story pretty much perfectly. Like I said, by the time I actually start shooting, I might want to make some minor adjustments here or there to the strength of the light to fit the morning part of my story. Like I said, if I want to make some overall adjustments to the light, I could use this white and black card, and I can really push this in some closer and bounce some of that light into the shadow areas, making it a lot less contrasty and a little bit more like morning. And if I wanted to suck up some of that light, I could use the black card and really suck up those shadows and make them a lot more contrasty, a little bit more like direct light, and then we can compare the two. All right, so I got that shot done now from above the table. So I'm going to clear everything off here and get rid of the food and all the props and stuff and set up for another camera angle. That way you can see what side lighting looks like from another perspective. All right, so I'm going to finish cleaning off this table here and set up and prepare for our next shot. And the first thing I'll do is kind of just put that stand in so we can set up the camera and get all our composition done. So I'm going to grab that plate that I want to use. It's a kind of a green plate, and I think you know, the cinnamon roll, the brown color of the cinnamon roll will really pop off of this color on the plate here, so that'll look really great. I'll just set that on the table, and then I'll set my camera up, and we can kind of move it around to see, you know, what works best when we kind of get our frame here. So I'll just pop this on the tripod, and I'll turn this on. That way you guys can see what's going on here in the camera. All right. So I can see now that I have a nice frame, but I think I want the plate a little bit closer to the camera, so I'll just move it a little bit closer. Maybe I'll adjust the frame here a little bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just tighten everything down. All right, and yeah, there we go. That looks pretty nice. Okay, and I think the first thing I notice is it's looking a little bit dark, and that's because my aperture is at f8, because previously I had my camera up there on the rig. And f8 for this kind of camera angle won't be very good because you'll see all the detail in the background. It's too narrow of a depth of field. I really want a shallow depth of field, so I'm going to switch it to around f4.0, and that'll give me some nice focus here, but everything else in the background will be kind of out of focus and blurry, really singling my subject out using depth of field to do that. That means I'll also need to change my shutter speed to around 1/100th. That looks pretty good. Kind of angle my tripod over a little bit. Yeah, that's looking really nice, and I think it'll be a good plate for those cinnamon rolls. Now that I have my plate set up and everything's looking kind of good, I'll get the rest of the props in the background, because I think we're going to need a background. I don't really want to show the floor and all that kind of nonsense in the background, so I'm going to put some kind of fake background here on the table, and that'll look really nice. And I'm going to use, actually, I'm going to use this green piece of board here, and that'll really play well with this green plate that I got going on here. And I'm not going to move it too close to my plate. I'm going to move it a little bit back. That way it kind of stays out of focus, and you know, all the detail doesn't show up in the picture. It's just more of a color and a texture. And I'll just grab some stuff here to prop it up. That way it doesn't fall over. Some heavier objects. Oh, that's not very heavy. There we go. And that way it kind of just stands up on its own. I really love this background. It's an old door. And it's an old piece of a door, and it works really great because it's got this really nice color, and a lot of things play really well with this color. Okay, so I got my background set up. Let me just take a look in the camera, see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks really kind of cool. It's just a color, and it's out of focus enough so I can't see all the you know, detail in there. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Now I'll just set up some of my other props. I think I'm going to use probably this blue fabric that I had from before, and maybe I'll just make that around the plate there a little bit. Just kind of not so perfect, just a little bit messy. Style a little bit messy, maybe have it coming off the table here a little bit. There we go, that looks kind of nice. And then I think I'll use, because they have some really nice almonds on the cinnamon wreaths, I think I'll keep those almonds that I had in the previous picture, and I'll just put them off here in the background. And I'll just add a little bit of color, a little bit of realism. Make it kind of look like an old-fashioned kitchen back here. I got this nice mason jar of spices, some cinnamon, some star anise, some cloves, and I think that'll really work well with the cinnamon wreaths that we have. Looks very nice, and that'll just add a little bit of interesting realism to the picture. And I got some utensils here in another mason jar. That'll look really kind of cool in the background there. I don't want to make it look too kind of, you know, cheesy and hip, but it's kind of the style of the cinnamon wreath anyways. And that's working really nice with the light back there. Looks really nice actually, and kind of frames our subject. I'll put some silverware in the foreground. There we go, something like so. Just to add a little bit of piece of human element into the photo. I think that looks nice. Also adds a nice little reflection there and kind of points to our food. All right, I think that's about it. I'll add some almond slices on this side to kind of fill in this negative space, as if I sprinkled almond and it kind of spilled over onto the table. So I'll just grab some of these almond slices, and hopefully I can do it quite naturally. Maybe something like so. And maybe I'll add a little bit over here just to make it look real. Okay, that's looking all right. Maybe I'll just mess around with it more when I have the food here. So I think I'm ready for the food, so I'm gonna grab the food and place it on the plate and then move it around so the light really hits it very nicely. We'll find the most perfect spot to place it. I'm gonna place it on the plate and kind of move it around the plate to find the best angle of the cinnamon wreath so it shows off its best angle in the photo. That looks really nice, but I think, I don't really like this bit on the cinnamon wreath. I really love these like nice little twisted bits, and I think that looks really beautiful. So I think I'll spin it around. That way we highlight those more, and this kind of just fades off into out of focus. That way I don't highlight that as much. I think really the winning, part of this cinnamon wreath is really up here in front. You really get to see the knot and the twist in the wreath. It's looking really good, and that light is looking really nice. The direction of light is looking fantastic. It's really just sweeping right over my cinnamon wreath here, and that looks really good. I think the almond slices need to be pushed over a little bit. They seem to be kind of a tad bit unrealistic. Yeah, maybe keep it like that. Okay, that looks nice. That looks really nice. So we're really singling our subject out here. We can, it's not too complicated of a photo. That way we just keep looking at the food, and we don't, want to just have it all be about the props. It's got to be about the food. So keep it really nice and simple. Maybe I'll bring that up over here so that kind of wraps around and creates a nice little line. There we go, something like that. So it doesn't look so unnatural. There we go. Kind of bend that down a little bit. Okay, that's looking really nice. It's looking really nice. All right. I might want to add a little bit of something right here. I'm not quite sure, maybe a plate or something that makes some sense. Maybe I'll add some of these. Maybe I'll add this plate here, see what that kind of looks like. It doesn't really make too much sense back there, and it kind of competes with the color, the green colors that I have going on. So I don't think I will add that, but maybe we'll add something. Maybe something will go. Maybe a little bit of twine. Maybe that'll create some nice interesting texture back there. Maybe make it part of that scene back there over there. Yeah, that kind of looks cool. And this line kind of points to my food, which is kind of very interesting. Yeah, I'll keep that going on there. That looks kind of nice. I like that. So I don't want it to be so obvious, I could sit here and play with the twine all day long, I guess. Yeah, that kind of looks really nice. I like that. Doesn't look too obvious, but it kind of fits. It kind of fits, and it kind of creates a cool little line. Draws our eye to the food. That's kind of really nice. Kind of what I wanted. So that looks good. All right, a little more still life. I'll push it out of the frame a little bit so it doesn't look so unnatural. All right, that looks really good. I like that. I like that a lot. I think I might twist the food just a little bit, maybe to show off a little more of that knot there. Okay, the last step is that I might want to brush on some butter to make it look a little more fresh from the oven. It's been a couple hours since I cooked this, and it seems to be a little dried out, so I might want to brush over some butter to give it that kind of fresh, straight from the oven look. So we'll see how that works. So I'm just going to spread some butter on here. I think this is really going to give it some really nice reflections and make it look really fresh and like straight from the oven, because it has been a while since I baked this. It's been a couple hours now, and it's kind of dried out a little bit. So I'm just going to freshen it up, bring some life back to it with a little bit of melted butter. And that'll look really nice, really delicious. Little dirty tricks of food photographers, bringing food back to life after it's sat on their table for too long. Another good method is to use olive oil. That's really nice. It really brings some life back to food. You can put it in a spritzer, or you can just brush it on like I'm doing here, and it's really nice. It brings the life back to the food. But because I want to eat this, or I thought butter made much more sense, considering it's pretty much 90% butter anyways. All right. Yeah, I think that's going to look really good. So that's really the last step before I take the picture. I kind of want to make sure everything's perfect. Otherwise, I got to style it again. And, I might just want to sprinkle a little bit more sugar, because some of the sugar came off while I was doing the butter. So I'll just get a little bit of this powdered sugar and I'll sprinkle that on there. That way it looks really nice. There we go. Yeah, that looks good right there maybe. Ooh. So it's looking really good here, and the light's really nice. Maybe I'll darken it up a little bit in the camera, maybe to about 1/160th. 1/125th looks nice, I think. So the last step is to get the focus. So I can't do it while the video's on, so I'll turn the video off, and I'll quickly grab focus and take a picture. And I think I'm gonna focus like right here. That's really nice. These lines are really nice, so I want those to be in focus, and then my focus will kind of just taper off as it goes into the background. So I like to set my camera on timer or use a remote. That way no shake is introduced into the picture. So this light direction is fantastic. It's really highlighting my food, making a nice highlight to shadow area that's kind of coming off the side of the frame here, and it's really separating my subject from the background. This area is just kind of popping off of all of these colors in the background. It's not blending in, and that's really what side lighting does. It's really good, and when you have that light direction, when you have those highlights and that shadow, it really just pops everything off the background, and it makes an exceptional photo, exceptional light. It's fantastic. Well, that's it for this full-length shoot on side lighting and light direction. I finally got an image that I'm happy with here. I got some nice negative space going on up here, and a kind of a cool little compositional thing down here with a nice little triangle between the cinnamon wreaths. All the other props really help further the story along, but my light direction is really giving my subject some very, very nice shape, that 3D pop effect that really separates them from the background. And it also is cluing my viewer into where the source is located, kind of saying, hey, there is a world outside of this frame, which makes the story a whole lot more real, a whole lot more believable. Now, next lesson, we're going to be focusing on backlighting our subjects and seeing how that will help tell our stories. And we'll be really focusing on the reflections and kind of the shapes that those highlights are going to give us. But for now, remember that too much shadow or too little shadow will really hurt your stories. Without shadows,